Hey, and good Thursday morning, everybody. Meteorologist Craig Majeski here, back on the Weather News YouTube channel with the Weather Report. Yeah, your no-nonsense, straightforward weather report without all that social media hype. That's what we like to do here. Get you prepared and not scared about what to expect with the weather across the country. So we're going to kind of break it down and give you an update on what you're going to see for today. Again, we're tracking maybe just around some severe weather here in the east. Looks like a marginal risk. We're going to break that down for you there. Going to talk about some tropical moisture coming in out of the Pacific, some flooding risks potentially out into Arizona. Some of that moisture enhancement gets into those zones as well. We also got a tropical disturbance out in the Atlantic, looking very likely. We're going to get Gabrielle here pretty soon. Going into the weekend, we'll have to track that going into the weekend as well. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this whole report, if you're new here to the channel and you're not yet a subscriber, if you please consider it, help our little counter move up there. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're alerted on future updates. If you ever have a weather-related question, please always post it down below. Give me a thumbs up. Does help with that thing called the YouTube algorithm, because it's real stingy, folks. Got to fight that thing. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what we got across the country here. Kind of the yesterday's extremes out there. We had a couple of them out there. It was 109 out in Death Valley. That continues to be the hot spot there. I forgot to move that over. In fact, I probably need to move that over. But anyway, Death Valley was 109 and 27 up in Red Feather Lakes, Colorado. Those were our two hot spots out there, hot and cold spots across the nation yesterday. Got some thunderstorms this morning here across Kentucky. We'll show you a closer look on that here in a little bit. Got some thunderstorms out here in the Gulf as we got this frontal boundary coming on. Then we got another one back behind here. Again, this is some cold weather here across the Great Lakes going to be moving in there as well. In fact, we're going to be really doing a little squeeze play on what's remaining of the summer season for parts of the nation. Very interesting map here as I show you the evolution of the temperature extreme here on the NAM, kind of showing you that front really pushing on to the south. Pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, here's your surface map out there for this morning. Again, we're going to be watching some of this tropical moisture here from Lorena coming up here to the north. So we got some flooding concerns here across Arizona. We're going to have to watch still a little bit some heat out here in the west as well. Check out some of these temperatures, 39 degrees there, 39 degrees with some rain up there into North Dakota there. There's a 37 across the border. So you just know we got the colder temperatures kind of moving on in here, making that transition there from summer, getting closer and closer to the official start of fall. Let's talk about some of this rain here. We got some of this rain here across Kentucky. Some pretty good downpours coming into that area right there. That, as you kind of see there on Radar Omega here, as we kind of zoom in on that. Let me get that up real quick. So we're talking about the Lexington, Danville, down toward London, Corbin, areas here across eastern Kentucky, getting some pretty good downpours coming up toward the Hazard area as well. As you can kind of see that rain moving across. And it's going to be in this general target zone with this frontal system moving on in here. That's going to give us that marginal risk for severe weather that we're going to break down for you here in just a second. Now, here's what we're currently seeing as far as our watches and warnings. Again, we already got the flash flood watches down here from some of that tropical moisture expected across Arizona, Southern California. A little fog across portions of Kansas this morning. A little breezy out here across the Dakotas as well, and still hold on to some of that heat here across the Pacific Northwest. I know those folks are getting tired of it. It looks like we're going to be breaking that down here in the days ahead as well. All right, so let's go and talk about the severe weather risk here for today. I want to break that down here for you. We're going to look at your day one marginal outlook here for today. As you can see, that stretching from areas of the Northeast coming into New York State, kind of coming in there through there and coming all the way back down into North Georgia and Tennessee. So we can kind of zoom in a little bit closer here. So we're talking about Billington, getting close to Philadelphia, Washington, D.C.'s in this as well, getting down toward Bristol, Knoxville, Cleveland, Tennessee. So again, come through parts of the Carolinas, Winston-Salem's in this as well. So this is our target zone. Let's break it down the categories for today. Tornado risk, don't have to worry about that. That's not there. But the wind risk, that'll be there. Again, run about 5%. So we're talking some gusty winds, individual storms, maybe getting up to about 60 miles per hour in some of those locations. And I don't expect the hail risk to be too big of a problem. We got a little cluster here across Tennessee, Kentucky, parts of North Georgia here. Maybe a little bullseye here with some individual hail possible, some storms here. Should be probably no bigger than pea to nickel size with some of that. All right, so let's talk about your day two outlook. Let's take you through going into your Friday and then getting into your Saturday. So let's go back to the category here, day two. Looks like we're going to have that boundary kind of stretching out here across the south. So again, kind of going from really kind of the Midwest to the south. So we're talking about Dallas, Pine Bluff, Jonesboro, Memphis is in this, Nashville's in this, obviously, Louisville, Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati. So in this zone right here for tomorrow, We'll do a breakdown on that as well. Tornado risk, we got a 2% risk here across portions of the Midwest. So we're talking Ohio, into Kentucky, into southern Indiana, into this zone in here for tomorrow. That's your tornado threat, running pretty low, but it's there. To watch that. Again, your wind threat will be kind of in here in the brown zone. Again, we're talking about Kentucky, Tennessee, getting up to Ohio and West Virginia. And then we'll look at your hail threat here. That shifts back here toward the south and west from Texas, Oklahoma, stretching all the way back up into Kentucky and Tennessee. So here's our zone right through there. So that is your day 2. That is for Friday. Okay, let's look at your day 3. Look at your day 3 here. We'll zoom back out again. A little pocket here across the mid-Atlantic here from basically Philadelphia, coming down toward Richmond, Greensboro here, going into Saturday. So this is your Saturday as we watch for that next front to kind of clear on through. We got a couple of fronts we're tracking. So this is the second one, and this is the one that'll bring the much cooler temperatures across the east, especially going in toward your Sunday and early next week. So look at that, from coast to coast, Maine all the way to Washington State. Yeah, I was pointing that out yesterday. Not very often do you see a general thunderstorm threat go from coast to coast. Kind of interesting tidbit. All right, let's talk about the excessive rain threat here for today. Obviously, our big target zone is going to be out here in the southwest. That's where we have our flash flood watches up here across Southern California and through Arizona here. So we're talking about the Phoenix metro area, Tucson metro area here under the gun for some potential flooding for this zone, especially that tropical enhancement. You got plenty of heat there. You get some good thunderstorms, good gully washers. Just watch out for urban flooding in those zones. And we got some pockets of this across Nevada, Utah, and into Colorado and in New Mexico. A little bullseye here across areas of Kentucky. We're kind of seeing that right now with some of the heavy rains moving through that zone, northern Tennessee, and also down here towards South Florida. How about day 2? Let's look at day 2 going into your Friday. Again, still holding on across the southwest. So Arizona, New Mexico, once again, stretching up into Oregon now with some of this. And then this will begin to shift a little bit further out into the plains. We'll have to watch this closely as some of that moisture begins to migrate across Mexico. We'll see how much of the mountains will steal from this. Obviously, those mountains across Mexico are going to steal some of that moisture. And we'll see some heavy rains kind of getting into portions of Texas, New Mexico, and into Colorado as well. Notice the east not looking too bad. A little bit up here across Maine, going into your Saturday and across extreme South Florida. But again, the green's not that bad. Green is very isolated pockets. It's when we get in the yellow and reds I really start to get concerned. So day 3 not looking bad, but of course this is subject to change, so stay tuned for updates there. Now let's go out into the tropics. We're going to talk about what's going on out there as we've got still dealing with that one disturbed area that we've been watching here for a little while now. So this is running about 80%. This is still running out in the middle of the Atlantic. Still got a couple days. Right now, it's also been updated to about 50% chance for development over the next couple days. So I suspect as we go into the weekend, and I was tracking kind of like, I was thinking Friday, Saturday, I thought would be the time frame we may get something tropical to develop. So we're going to watch this closely. Right now, it looks like this is going to take a similar path to what we saw with Aaron, at least right now. It's right now, when I show you the ensemble model, it's a little bit further south than what it was showing yesterday for comparison. So I'm going to show you that and gets a little bit further to the west. So look, here's our satellite imagery. Still looking at this. See this brown hue? You still have the dust out here. It's really unusual to see that amount of dust still holding on. Here's our tropical disturbance right there. Here's our area right there. Here's another tropical wave here. But there's this one back here that we're watching for potential development here. But still seeing that dust out there. Amazing to still see here in September. Usually it clears out by the time we get this time of year. All right, so let's look at your model tropical data here. Again, this we're watching is its periphery here going around the Bermuda High up here toward the north. It's a little bit further south than what the models were showing yesterday. So it's getting it may impact the leeward and windward islands here, and then starts to make the turn as the weakness comes off the eastern seaboard here. It starts to get drawn further to the north here on the end of this 10-day run. You see it being pulled to the north. So if you kind of split the difference to the middle of these, that kind of tells me, again, something similar to what we saw with Aaron. But just like with Aaron, remember it was progressing a little bit further to the west as it got going here a little bit. It depends on its forward speed and how it develops. But once we get a center of circulation for the models to lock in on, we'll have a better idea of what this looks like. But for right now, the trend is for this thing to turn to the north. It should stay off the eastern seaboard. Whether it splits the difference between Bermuda and the East Coast again, we'll wait and see. We got a lot of time to watch this system. Now, as far as out in the Pacific side of things, this is Lorena, a hurricane out here. This is the one that's going to be moving up into the southwest. This one continues to move up toward the east, to the west here. So I'm not worried about this one, but we'll see how close it gets to Hawaii. But for right now, that should stay south of them. Let's go look at the track on this. Again, we're expecting this thing to weaken as it quickly moves into cooler waters, as it makes that turn. It's very, very slow. Look how slow this thing takes for it to come on up, which is kind of a good thing. I mean, since some of the moisture, if it was accelerating up at a faster rate of speed, I'd be really concerned about more widespread flooding being an issue. But the fact that it's losing its gusto and it's moving so slowly, that's a plus. So it kind of maybe rain itself out a little bit. So, but we're still going to have some flooding potential. We got to watch there across the southwestern portion of the United States. And we'll break down the models on that here in just a second. Again, here's our hurricane up here, Lorena, as it moving on up. And here's Keiko out here. Nice little storm continuing to roll off toward the west there. All right, let's go and get into the model data here for this morning. Let's get you a breakdown on that. We're going to look at the NAM 3 kilometer. We're going to look at that one first here. This is your intermediate model. It's going to take you out for the next 60 hours as we kind of watch some of that tropical moisture. Again, you see it kind of influencing up into this zone here. And with this frontal boundary coming down to the south, what sometimes happens is that you'll get some interaction with that tropical moisture and the frontal boundary, so it can enhance the rain a little bit. But the timing may be off. Look at this big spill down here, this cold boy coming on down. Snows will stay up to the north. I don't think it'll get quite into Minnesota. We were kind of tracking that yesterday, but that looks like this will continue to spill off toward the east. So we got one frontal system that's moving through right now. That's this one. And then this is the big one that's going to cool down, really kind of squeeze the hot temperatures, especially across the south down here as we go through the weekend. It's really going to be spreading across a big chunk of the country with below normal temperatures once again. That's been kind of the theme going out of August and now going into September here. Let's go look at your rainfall amounts here. Again, this goes for the next 60 hours here. So let me stop it right there. Obviously, you're seeing the rains here across the southwest. A lot of this heavy rains down in Mexico because it's slowed down. So not looking too bad in here, but we do have some pockets, again, 2 to 4 inches in there. Got some heavy rains here across Kentucky and into portions of Tennessee that needs to be watched. So we're talking Nashville up to Louisville into this. Again, we're getting some pretty decent rains in here. 3-inch plus showing up here in some of these purple areas. So some localized flooding and potential will run into these zones, I think. And then this kind of stretches up the rains into the northeast, up toward New York, up to New York as that front comes on through. And we've got the wraparound range of that big low pressure system, kind of a cold rain here across the UP of Michigan and coming up toward Wisconsin as well. So that is your rainfall. That, again, it takes you out till 2 o'clock on Saturday. All right, let's go take a look at the temperatures here. And I got this thing really looping. I like looping this because you can really see the evolution of the cold front pushing and really squeezing out those purple temperatures there. Just look at this thing really oozing it on the south, really squeezing that cool air coming in, even getting into Texas there and squeezing it out. So by the time we get to the end of the run, look what's going on here at the end. You see all the purple in here, all the heat across Texas and across the south. But this thing's charging southward here and really kind of squeezing this out. So by the time we get to the end of this run, and I'll pause it here at the end of the run, look where that cold front's kind of lined up. You can see it very, very well here. Right through here, this is where we're kind of holding on to some summertime heat, but really much cooler temperatures here going into your Saturday for a big portion of the country here. Very fall-like, feeling pretty nice here. Still, again, unseasonably cool. It's still the first week in September. We are making that transition. We're losing daylight, obviously, as we go through going through the month of September. But again, that's a nice, strong cold front there, and even not overly hot here across the southwest as well. Now, let's go look at the big weather pattern here. We're looking at the American GFS model. We're kind of looking at the height anomalies. That's where we kind of track our troughs and our high pressures and things. So we're definitely seeing the trough kind of lingering here across the south. The west coast is going to get a little bit of relief with this trough that's kind of stuck off the west coast there. But here comes our tropical system here. This will be probably Gabrielle as it comes. How close is this thing going to get? You notice it kind of splits between Bermuda and the East Coast. This is the GFS model here. So again, we got plenty of time to watch this, but with this persistent troughiness that we've had pattern-wise over a while, I tend to agree, or I think we're going to get this thing to pull and take a turn to the north here. It's just a question if it was going to undercut and kick into the Caribbean. I don't think that'll be the case here, but this thing will get picked up. Now, if it misses it, then we'll see maybe other storms. Again, it's all about timing, about where the troughs are and where that tropical system is going to be. But for right now, it looks like we see a turn back out to sea. All right, let's look at your forecast run here over the next 7 days. This is your American GFS. Again, we're going to get some relief out on the west coast, folks. We got some rain coming. Cooler temperatures, Washington State. It's coming, guys. Just hold on. Here comes our tropical moisture here across the southwest. We're going to see some rains here going into the weekend for Saturday and Sunday. This will shift into Texas as we watch that frontal boundary kind of clear here across the southeast. You'll see cooler temperatures here across the eastern third of the United States. Next week's looking fairly dry for a lot of the country once we get this tropical moisture to kind of kick on out. But we got that big frontal system moving on through. A little bit of unsettled weather here for the Pacific Northwest for Monday and Tuesday. That'll be bringing that cooler weather and rain and relief, finally beating back that summer heat. And hopefully that'll be the last you see of that. Now, once we go into the middle of next week, we will see the heat return across the middle of the country. Still tracking that toward the middle and end of next week as this cooler pool kind of moves across into the northeast and into the southeast. We'll have a little bit of wedging here across the east here a little bit. But that's what we're looking at for the next 7 days. Let's look at your temperatures here. Again, look at your snapshot here for Sunday morning. Wow, very nice. A lot of 40s out here, even getting in 50s across with this big green zone in here. Still seeing the warmth here across the south with the 60s and 70s there in the yellow, but the green, that's our 40s and 50s, and even some 30s. Got some upper 30s. Look at it, 36 degrees right there in Minnesota. Oh, probably gonna get some frost up in here. I already got some frost advisories up there. I know they're gonna have some more coming that way. So let's go check out your Monday morning as we'll check this out here. We're going to your Monday afternoon here. Again, very pleasant in the northeast for going into your Sunday afternoon with temperatures here in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Still holding out the heat across the south on Sunday, but we're squeezing out. Remember, we got that front moving on in here going into your Sunday. Let's go into your Monday morning at 8 o'clock. So look at it, we're getting the cool all the way down into the south and across the high plains. The southeast looking pretty good. The northeast looking great. Still warm across Texas. Still holding on to the 70s there, but we'll get some relief there coming there eventually here. Coming on in here, and then going in toward, again, that relief is going to be brief, obviously coming in for the end of this week, but going into next week, that's where things heat back up again. So Texas, y'all got a little bit of relief coming in for Friday and Saturday, but then as we get to Monday next week, things start to heat back up again. You see the 90s here popping back up here across the high plains, high upper 80s here across Montana. So we're warming things back up there in the west once again as that high pressure and that cooler air shifts off toward the east. And then there's your highs on Monday. Let's look at Tuesday morning's lows here. Again, still holding cool here across the middle. Look at the big warm up here in the middle of the country. I mean, we're talking 60s going all the way up to Montana here, all the way north. A little cooler here in the west. Remember, you got that tropic kind of lingering up there off the east coast, off the west coast, I should say, going into your Tuesday. And then let's go your Tuesday afternoon temperatures. There's your 5. Look at the heat here in the middle of the country. Yeah, cooler here in the east. Very hot here in the plains in the west, cooler here across the Pacific Northwest at least. Or at least we're not seeing the 90s across Washington State. But very hot in the middle of the country as we go toward Tuesday and Wednesday. And then here going into Wednesday afternoon, still look at the heat building in here. Some are saying, I'm not done just yet. You can see it, look at 90s, 96, 96, 97 here, 95 in Nebraska. So we still got the heat here in the middle of the country. East Coast not looking bad, 70s here across the East Coast. West Coast not looking bad, but it's going to be hot in the middle of the country going into the middle of next week. Wish I had better news for you guys there. And then going into your Thursday highs, let's go look at Thursdays. Again, we got hundreds popping in here. Oh, that's terrible. 98, now 100 degrees back across the Rio Grande there. I mean, not Rio Grande, the Big Bend area there across Texas there. That's going to be very hot for us. Dallas as well, and some 90s up toward areas of Montana. So again, cooler here across the northwest at least, cooler in the northeast. The south starts to heat back up again. Looks like we can see some 90s kind of flirting here toward the end of Thursday of next week. But the heat here in the middle of the country, unfortunately, some are saying, I'm not finished just yet. But we'll see what happens here as it does look like the second half of the month of September will bring some changes there. All right, let's look at your climate outlook here. Obviously, we got that big cool there in the east there. So this is your climate outlook here. Taking you through into the month of September. Let me get my interactive mode here. And if I get to the right map, my apologies on that. Here we go. Here we go. So here we go. Again, we're looking at the cool weather here across the east, here across with below normal temperatures. That looks good. We're going to heat up here in the plains. We got the cool here in the west. That's lining up pretty good. Again, this is for the 9th through the 13th of September. But as we go deeper into the month, we're going to trim that away a little bit. There you go. Big heat, big warm up there in the middle of the country, and we're definitely seeing that. With above normal temperatures, all the little cool pocket here in the west and little here along the east coast here as we go from the 11th through the 17th. Let's look at the precipitation chances. Big dry spell with that cool. Look at this, below normal temperatures here across a big portion of the country here in the northeast, the Midwest, and coming in here across the mid-south. Very wet across the Pacific Northwest. Drier weather here across the Southwest, which will be kind of good news after the heavy rains they're going to get here. More short-term forecast. And then going out from the 11th to the 17th, continuing with the dry weather here across a big chunk of the east and a little wet out here in the west. Now, as we go into the second half of the month of September, what I'm going to be watching and watching very closely is going to be how La Nina develops out in the Pacific, and to see how, if we get any kind of reaction in the Caribbean and in the Gulf, and see if we start seeing some more activity out there in the tropics, okay? Because I do suspect that with that happens, we start getting pressure falls in the Atlantic, which I think is going to happen. I think we'll see an uptick in activity. I think this might be very similar to last year. We saw an uptick in activity kind of the late September, early October window last year. And I think we'll see something similar this year with the tropics. We'll see right now. Again, the X factor has been that Saharan dust, which has been really not been good for the any of the tropical waves coming off the African coast. They've been having to fight that drier and that dust layer. That's been a bit of an inhibitor, but we'll see how things develop as we go into getting ready to start the second half of the hurricane season. Right? Today's September the 4th. The peak of obviously is September the 10th. So we still got a whole half of a season ahead of us. So you guys have been saying, this tropical season hasn't been bad. It's not been going bad. Well, just hold on. We're not done with the season yet. So, and there's plenty of heat out in the Gulf for sure, and in the Caribbean to feed some storms that can aggressively develop quickly and become monsters before you know it. So again, who we got out there for this morning? We got Rita out there as usual. Edith's watching, and we got, is that Julie? Julie out there watching this morning from Mountain City up there in Northeast Georgia. Again, appreciate you guys checking out the channel here for this morning. Again, I'm going to change the thumbnail up a little bit. If you guys see this a little bit later, I'm going to be fooling around with the thumbnail and the titles a little bit, because boy, our viewership is really, like I said, the algorithm is pretty much taken this channel and flushed it right down the toilet. So that's why I do concentrate more on Facebook than I do on YouTube, because YouTube's become a lost cause. A little bit oversaturation, but I still like doing these reports, so I'm still going to do these. But hopefully I can crack that nut and try to get that moving in the right direction right now. But for right now, it's okay. All right. You guys take it easy. I appreciate you guys checking us out. You guys be good, stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow. No, I'm sorry. Time out. Tomorrow, I almost forgot. Tomorrow, I got to work at Fox 5 in Atlanta, so I'm not going to have time to do these tomorrow. So I apologize for that. I got to go in a little bit earlier than I typically do. I got to do the 10, the noon, and the 4 tomorrow. So it means I got to leave at 7:30, and I don't know if I'll have time to get this in because I got to take care of another client. So, but I will. But I'll be watching closely over the weekend, and if I need to do anything special, we'll be back in here on Monday. And then keep in mind also that I got vacation starting from the 12th to the 22nd of September. So that's why I'm hoping the tropics stay quiet until I get back from my vacation. The wife and I got a vacation coming up. All right, you guys take it easy, be good, stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time, probably on Monday, okay? All right, you guys take it easy. We'll talk to y'all later.